Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is David, and today we are going to have our first, and probably only until the end, kind of casual discussion about the contents of Dangerous Visions, edited by Harlan Ellison. So it says here it's the most honored science fiction anthology of all time. And the premise behind it was that these are all original stories, never seen before at the time, and that Harlan's pitch to them, to the writers who he collected stories from, was send me the stuff that you can't get published anywhere else. The ones that editors will run away from, that they won't touch the topic, the material, what have you. And you would think that with something like that, you'd have some pretty stellar outcomes here. And looking at the table of contents, you see a lot of big names, and you just know it's going to be a slam dunk. And back in 1967, when this was released, it absolutely was. It had, as you can see on the back here, 3 award winners and 3 award nominees. And no surprise, I mean, Philip K. Dick, Larry Niven, Theodore Sturgeon, Samuel Delany, Fritz Leiber, Philip Jose Farmer. All 6 of those are really big names, and that doesn't even include, Poul Anderson, Damon Knight. You've got Lester Del Rey, Robert Bloch, Robert Silverberg, Frederick Pohl, Roger Zelazny. You've just got all kinds of names that you just, in hindsight, you can look back and say, these are pillars of the science fiction genre, without whom we wouldn't have the material that we can look back on today and go back and enjoy. And as you can see here, it's about halfway. So the next story I'm going to be reading is Utopia by Poul Anderson. And so that's puts me at page 302 out of 600 and some pages. 576, so a little over halfway in terms of page count. And of the bunch of these stories, there is one story that I absolutely did not enjoy. 1 or 2 stories that were good. And the rest of them were pretty forgettable, unfortunately. And Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads. He's been the one bravely soldiering through daily reads with me, and we've been voxering about them. And there's a couple other folks in there, but I know, for example, Liam from Liam's Lyceum has just been so busy that he's fallen behind, and that's okay. Gareth from Book Songs and Other Magic had the e-copy of this and didn't realize there's 3 volumes of it on his phone, and he didn't realize that the 3 of them together made up this. So it was a bigger task than he thought he was signing on for. So he read, I believe, the first volume and is going to get to the other 2 at some point in time later on. And it's been interesting. When the anthology started, we were talking about the 2 forewords by Isaac Asimov and how kind of out of place it felt, having Asimov writing it, because Asimov went out of his way in that first foreword to make it clear that he didn't feel like he could contribute to this because he's very much of the previous wave of science fiction writers. And so he wouldn't fit in the mold of what Harlan was compiling here, which were the revolutionary voices of this new wave of science fiction. And it almost felt like Asimov was patting himself and his brethren from that previous wave on the back, more so than paving the way for this new one. And I would say that so far, 70% of the introductory material by Harlan Ellison has been absolutely enjoyable. Going from his introduction as well as the introductions to all of the different stories. Most of them have been really good. And there was one today that we read where it went out of his way to talk about how this this author is somebody that Harlan can call to get him out of sticky situations. He had some trouble when he was in the military and had this friend in high places that could get him off the hook, and that he was able to be riding along with this guy, and he's speeding down around and gets pulled over, and then they're like, oh, no, it's you. Okay, carry on. It just felt really odd, and it went to, it harkened back to Steve Donahue's starter kit on science fiction anthologies. And the comment that he made that some of the anthologies, and you can usually tell which ones they are the editors reaching out to all his buddies and saying, hey, send me something and I'll get you in there. And that very much feels like what Dangerous Visions is. At times, there are some of these where it's just absolutely, you can tell that this person's in here because he's Harlan's buddy. And others where Harlan doesn't have much to say other than, basic biographical information, is probably more along the lines of, this is a fresh young voice or a newer voice or somebody that Harlan just really doesn't know and doesn't have much to say about, but their story earned its way in there. And one of those was The Jigsaw Man by Larry Niven, which was a runner-up for an award winner. And it was Niven at 4 years into his writing career, and was one of the best ones in here. Faith of Our Fathers by Philip K. Dick was not a great one, but a really good one. One of the top tier ones that was in here. Because it had some good thoughts behind it. But was, if you've read a lot of Philip K. Dick, it's a little off the wall. Like you tend to expect his stuff to be. Gonna Roll Them Bones by Fritz Leiber was a really good one. Not fantastic. I don't know why it won both the Hugo and the Nebula. Probably on the weight of his name as much as anything. Because it didn't feel like there was anything that special about it, but it was written well. Very enjoyable. And of course, the absolute garbage in here is Riders of the Purple Wage by Philip Jose Farmer, which won a Hugo Award. And I don't know how. I, honest to goodness, do not know how. And I'm guessing it's because it's such an experimental, lengthy, literary science fiction. It pays homage to one of Steve Donahue's favorite authors. I mean, I know he says this all the time when he's talking about this Irish author and the wonderful, wonderful works that he writes. And now I'm drawing a blank on it. He wrote Finnegan's Wake, among others. James Joyce. Donahue's gone on record saying he absolutely adores him, right? And it was just, I know Greg didn't finish that story. He got about 20 pages into it. It's by far the longest one in here. I think about 80, 90 pages long. It's a novella. And in the introduction, it even goes out of the way to say that Philip Jose Farmer had submitted it, and it was around 15,000 words. Then, a little bit later, asked Harlan for permission to, for free, expand upon it, because he felt there was more he could add and say. And then it became a 30,000 word monstrosity. I think it would have been a lot better at 15,000. I don't know for sure, but at least it would have been a little quicker to get through that torture. Because it just was, I understood the ideas he was shooting for, but I didn't appreciate the execution on it. And in general, what we've come to as a consensus so far at about the halfway point is that we can appreciate what this did for science fiction, for anthologies in general. The footprints that it left behind are groundbreaking. And without Dangerous Visions, I don't know what the science fiction genre would have looked like today. Probably not as good. Might not have thrived nearly as well. Might have even fallen completely by the wayside. Who knows? But I don't know that there's a single story in here that I honestly, if I were putting together any kind of an anthology, I don't think I would include any of the ones I've read so far. Greg points out that the Jigsaw Man probably would be the one he would consider. And I would agree. I think that's probably the one that would be leading the pack. But even that, I don't know that I would include that one. So not only have the stories across the board been not disappointments, but underwhelming. And I think that Greg made a great point in that because so much has happened since then. So many things have been written. There are so many anthologies out there that compile stories that the bar for greatness surpasses what these stories are now. Back in the 60s, this was phenomenal and revolutionary and groundbreaking. But by today's standards, it's a whole lot of eh. And that's okay. Because I'm glad I'm reading it. I'm not going to stop reading it because I want to experience all of the ones that are in here. Will I ever read it again? I don't know. It depends on what else is in here. If I come across a couple of really, really good ones I want to re-experience, I might keep it. If I had to decide right now, today, where I'm at, I probably wouldn't keep this one. I'm pretty good about, as I'm getting through books, to cycle them out, unless they are keepers. Ones I would want to revisit. And I imagine ones like The Jigsaw Man are probably anthologized elsewhere, that I could find an anthology that has them. That's not this one. And the other question that we've kind of circled around on all of the stories, and for the most part have had huge resounding no answers to, is would the story still be dangerous if it was being published today? Is the content in here enough that it would feel taboo, wildly out of place, like shocking? And by and large, like, no. I think that is not a testament against Dangerous Visions as much as it is our culture, our society has changed so much to where we're desensitized to some really bizarre shit. And that's a little concerning. You know, reading stories with not just murder, not just rape, but cannibalism, incest. Those things people wouldn't bat an eye. Reading a story about Jack the Ripper and the horrible things he does probably isn't going to cause anybody to lose any kind of sleep. It wouldn't be considered that dangerous, that shocking today. There are a lot of them that feel extremely, extremely tame. And I think that says a lot about our culture, our society today. Not necessarily in a good way either. So there you have it. There's the halfway check-in on Dangerous Visions. At this point in time, I would tell you don't pick this one up. Instead, pick up. I know exactly where it's at. I'm just going to get to it. Pick up this instead. The good old stuff. Adventure science fiction in the grand tradition. Gosh, I can't read it mirrored right now. Edited by Gardner Dozois. This is a much, much better anthology. Start to finish. So if you're going to pick up an anthology, this is the one I would recommend at this point in time. So there you go. There's my thoughts so far. We'll see at the end of the month. I'll probably check in very early January. Although you never know. Maybe it'll be December 31st. And share my final thoughts on Dangerous Visions. So thank you, BookTube. Have a wonderful rest of your day.